Okay, I want to be respectful of everybody's time tonight, so we'll go ahead and get started. I think there's a couple people still signing in, but I want to make sure we get started this evening. My name is Linda Bridwell. I'm the Executive Director of the Public Service Commission. Tonight's meeting is a public comment meeting on the Louisville Gas and Electric and Kentucky Utilities Certificate of Public Need and Convenience and Necessity application, case number 2025-00445. And I bring up the case number because as we talk tonight, if you want to submit public comments at a later date, you will need to reference that case number. So I'll repeat that 3 or 4 times. So let me just get started with the meeting agenda tonight. The meeting agenda will go briefly, just a very high-level presentation by the staff. This is an opportunity to hear the details of the proceeding, but when I say this is a high level, there are not details in this presentation. And I want you all to understand when we go into the Q&A period, the Q&A period is if you have questions about the process, if you have questions about how to make additional public comments. The utility is not making a presentation tonight about what they've applied. The commission is not making a detailed presentation about what is in the application. All of that information is in the case record. It's open to the public to review at any time. But what I try and explain, because a lot of people when they hear public meeting expect to come out and get a detailed understanding of what's actually being proposed. And I want to make sure that we understand that. This is an opportunity for your voice to be heard. The commissioners are here. They will not be answering questions. There won't be back and forth. This is for them to hear your public comment, and it's an opportunity for us to do this, hopefully more convenient for the people that live in part of LG&E's territory. So that's really the purpose of tonight. So the commissioners cannot provide any answers to questions. And the public comments, however, are documented in writing and are filed in the public comment record. And the reason for this is, and I'll explain it as we go a little bit more about the Public Service Commission. So first of all, the Public Service Commission is a 3-member administrative body appointed by the governor with quasi-judicial duties. It was created in 1934. So that's part of the reason why there's not this back and forth questioning tonight. These 3 commissioners essentially serve as the judge in this proceeding. So I want you to understand that just like if you were to appear in court, they are here to hear you, but they can't answer questions back and forth, and it would be inappropriate for them to answer questions. So the PSC regulates more than 1,100 utilities in Kentucky. The PSC is funded by an assessment paid by all utilities based upon the utility's annual gross revenues. And the bottom line here is that our mission, as authorized by the General Assembly, is that every utility shall furnish adequate, efficient, and reasonable service at fair, just, and reasonable rates. And that's the mission of the Public Service Commission, to ensure that that happens. So that's what they're looking at as we go through it. So let me explain a little bit about what a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity is. All regulated utilities are required to seek a CPCN for any new construction of plant, equipment, property, or facility for providing service. So the commission, when considering an application to construct a base load electric generating facility, may consider the policy of the General Assembly to foster and encourage use of the Kentucky coal for electric utilities serving the Commonwealth. And I wanted to make sure that I put that in there because that is part of the statutory information, the statute on certificates of public and convenience and necessity. So the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, the utility has to demonstrate that if the CPCN is granted, the facilities will not result in wasteful duplication. That excess investment is in relation to need, so the additional investment that they're going to make is in relation to need, and the utility has to demonstrate that reasonable alternatives have been analyzed. So let me make sure I repeat that. The utility has to demonstrate that reasonable alternatives have been analyzed. So the selected project has to be the least cost reasonable alternative. So that doesn't always necessarily mean it's the absolute least cost. Sometimes, right, the least cost may be to do nothing. It may mean that 5 years from now there's no utility service, but because the facilities have deteriorated. But again, it has to be least cost and reasonable for providing service. So a proposal that costs more than another alternative does not necessarily result in wasteful duplication. So that's the standard that the commission is having to look at as part of when they're reviewing a certificate of public convenience and necessity. Now I want to mention just briefly the generation retirement that occurred, part of the statutes that were changed just in the last 5 years. So Kentucky Revised Statutes 278.264, the rebuttable presumption against the retirement of fossil fuel-fired generating facilities unless certain evidence is provided by the utility. The commission must find that the utility provided sufficient evidence that the replacement generation is dispatchable, maintains or improves reliability and resilience of electric transmission grid, and maintains minimum reserve capacity established by the utility's reliability coordinator. And I only bring that up, LG&E and KU were the first utility that applied under that statute as part of case number 22402. So what LG&E and KU has asked for in the certificate is the construction of 2 natural gas combined cycle generators, Brown 12, which is a 645 megawatt in service in 2030 with an estimated cost of $1.38 billion. Mill Creek 6, which is 645 megawatt in service 2031 with an estimated cost of 1.4. And if you were at the presentation last week or you saw it, this is where I misspoke, that I said that Brown 3 had been approved for retirement in the case 2022-402. That's not correct. In this case, that has not been requested. Brown 3, however, in the modeling in this case is fully depreciated in 2035 with landfill constraints starting in 2034. So the battery energy storage system, a BESS system with a lithium-ion battery located at Cane Run, 400 megawatts for 4 hours or 1,600 megawatt hour, in service in 2028 with a cost estimated at $775 million. They've also asked for a selective catalytic reduction, or an SCR, for nitrogen oxide emission control, Gent 2 in service in 2028, an estimated $152.3 million. The total transmission upgrade cost for all of the facilities would be another $74.8 million, so the BESS, the Brown 12, and Mill Creek 6. And a site compatibility certificates for Brown 12, Mill Creek 6, and the Cane Run BESS. So they have the estimated costs in here as part of the alternatives analysis, but I want to make sure that everybody in the audience understands this is not a request for a rate increase. This is simply to approve whether or not the construction project before they start spending money on it is appropriate as public convenience and necessity. So in case number 2025-00045, there are a number of intervening parties, including the Attorney General, the Southern Renewable Energy Association, the Kentucky Industrial Utility Customers, the Kentucky Coal Association, jointly Louisville Metro and Lexington Fayette Urban County Government, the Sierra Club, and a group called the Joint Interveners in the case. So Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, Kentucky Solar Energy Society, Metropolitan Housing Coalition, and the Mountain Association. So in a case like this, the utility is the applicant. As I talked about, the commission serves in this quasi-judicial role, and the intervening parties are the parties that intervene as an opposing party to the case. So the Attorney General by statute is the representative for consumers within the state of Kentucky in all utility cases. So the next steps. So we had a public meeting last week in Lexington. We have a public meeting tonight. Those are the 2 public meetings for comments, the public hearing. The evidentiary hearing will begin in Frankfurt on Monday. Again, this is where I had on the slide last week, Tuesday, but I had the right date, August 4th. So Monday, August 4th, 2025 at 9 a.m. This is an evidentiary hearing where witnesses are sworn in, lawyers ask questions back and forth. It will continue for a number of days. The public comment, there will also be an opportunity for public comment at the beginning of the first day of that hearing. So if you don't feel like you're comfortable, if you came tonight expecting to hear a lot of details and then you're not certain you want to get up tonight, but you want to make a public comment after you've educated yourself a little bit more, or you talk to someone else, you can either come to Frankfurt on August 4th at 9 a.m., or you can log in the day before. You notify the commission that you would like to participate remotely in the public comment meeting and make comments. We will give you, and we don't give you the instructions until the day before to make sure that we don't have people bombing into our virtual feed. But you can offer virtual public comments. All of this, the video tonight, as well as the hearing public comments, are all posted as part of the public record. It will take us about 24 hours to get tonight's hearing up and on the website. In addition to that, again, if you go home and you think of something else, maybe you made a public comment tonight, but you think of something else that you'd like to say, you can offer written comments at any time up until really about 2 weeks after the hearing is over, sometime in there. They are still all part of the public record. Of course, you can make public comments up until the case is closed, but if you want them to be considered, and let me assure you, the commissioners do read through the public comments that are posted on the website. The hearing is open to the public, the entire hearing. You can come to Frankfurt if you want to sit through the hearing. It also live streams from our website, so it'll be at the very top of when you open up our website. I want to make sure that you understand that we are required by statute to issue an order within a certain time frame. The final order has to be entered by October 28th in this case of this year. So I'm going to open it up at this time. If you have opportunity, this is your opportunity to ask questions about the process of the case or the proceeding in general, or public comments, because once the public comment period opens and we open it up and people start coming forward and making their comments, the commission will take the public comments and really won't respond to any public questions. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. Sure.
Your choice.
Okay.
And I'll say, I thank you. I've been to a number of these. That's one of the better expository openings. Can anybody hear me?
He's checking in the sound booth.
Okay, beep? Yep. Okay. I said that's one of the better expositions of what this is about that I've heard, and I thank you. I have 3 questions which are, am I not speaking into the mic? Okay. One of your slides that went by pretty fast, it said that several units needed site-compatible certificates. I don't know what a site-compatible certificate is. Appreciate if you could explain that.
That's just part of the request before they can build, is in addition to having a certificate of public convenience and necessity, is also in order to construct generating facilities. So it's
sort of like a zoning approval kind of thing. Is that a reasonable understanding?
That's probably a reasonable.
Okay. What is Brown 12, which was on your slide? I never heard of a Brown 12.
Okay, it's a facility that's located at the Brown Power Plant. So any further explanation, you would have to go into the case record and look at what you can do.
A somewhat broader question. You talked a bit about how you had to meet a number of requirements in order to approve a coal unit retiring. But as I understand it, the major thrust of the CPCN is talking about speculation to build units which will service data centers which do not as yet exist. And since my understanding is that's what this proceeding is really about, I thought maybe I would ask you to comment on that.
I don't really want to comment on, it was kind of, I guess, as part of the planning process, understanding a little bit. I certainly didn't mean to go through the slides very quickly, and you certainly are able to read through the case proceedings as well as the staff. So if you have a question about something, certainly feel free to raise it during the public comment period and just say, you know, I don't understand that. Yes.
You said that this isn't about a rate increase, but if this passes, the rate increase is coming down the pike. Is that correct?
So it's a two-step process. So all this does is approve that the construction is not wasteful and is meeting the needs of the community. The costs at the point then, at some point in the future, would then be included in rates, yes.
Okay.
And they would have to apply for a rate application. So I just want to make sure a lot of people, when they first see it, assume that this is also an approval of the rates to pay for it. It's not at this point.
Okay, so they already currently have an application in for a rate increase, and so we're potentially looking at one through that application and another at some point in the future related to this.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One quick question about the process. Will the Public Service Commission have the ability, is it just a yay or nay on the application by LG&E for this CPCN? Or can the Public Service Commission, at its discretion, based on what it hears in testimony and in questions and during this hearing process in Frankfurt, be able to offer a certificate that differs from what LG&E asked for?
I don't want to answer your question in a way that somehow misleads someone. So generally, a CPCN is a yes or a no. There are certainly conditions that can be put around any approval that's granted by the Public Service Commission, and if you read through other orders, you will see that the Commission has the discretion. And I really don't want to go into too much more detail that might suggest anything that I don't want you to hear something that I'm not trying to say. I'm really just trying to offer straightforward. Yes, sir.
I appreciate the members of the commission here being here tonight and listening to our questions and comments later. I just have in this what dictates public convenience and necessity? Who determines that? That's my first question.
Okay, so, and again, let me, again, I don't want to go into too far of a legal explanation. So sure. The standard is set in the statutes and through a considerable amount of precedent that has been set, and the utility or the applicant has the burden of proof to demonstrate that they have met that standard.
Okay, so the utility makes that determination, basically.
The burden of proof is on the utility that they have met the standard in the statute.
My second question is in relation to the BES, particularly, and my wife and I live within the fence line community, less than 1,000 yards from where this is slated to be built. Is the risk involved? Does that become a determining factor in any of this? Based on, if you're familiar with lithium-ion technology, I am, and hopefully there's others here that are also, it's very high risk. My question
let me stop you right there. So, because I think this, you probably want to save that for public comments. So at this point, the standard for the, again, let me emphasize, adequate, safe service at fair, just, and reasonable rates, and then there's a lot of renewal in that. So let me, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
I'm
I think
not
what
concerned about the rate. I am concerned about the rates because I know it's being passed on to
Well,
us
I think
in the
what-
future.
I
But the risk involved is I live, if that thing catches on fire, one, and it will eventually.
Okay, let me stop you right there. You really need to save that for the public comments. It's not that they don't want to hear that, but save that for the public comments. This is really just, what I'm asking now is, do you have any questions about the proceeding?
Okay.
So,
Well, I'm just wondering if the proceeding does take any risk in light of proving it.
and
That's all I'm
that is
asking.
something that you can.
Okay, thank
Okay. So let me emphasize too.
No way.
When if you have questions about the details or something like this about the amount of risk, you are welcome to ask those questions during your comments. What I want to make sure that I explain is that when you ask questions, the commissioners nor the staff will answer your questions, but that doesn't mean that that's not something that commissioners are also curious about and will ask the utility during the proceeding of the hearing. Okay? So, yes,
So
sir.
because this connects to the grid, is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission involved in these proceedings?
Okay, again, this is for the Public Service Commission, and
Right.
I think you want to ask those questions during the public comment period. We're not there yet, folks. If you have something you want to say about this
No, I mean, that's not
specific-
my question. That is my question.
This is a commission strictly in front of the Public Service Commission of Kentucky.
Right, so is the Public Service Commission involving the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in your proceeding? That's the question.
Again, so the burden of proof is on the utility that they have met the application and met all standards and requirements of federal and state law. So to that extent, you may want to consult with the Attorney General's office on whether you believe, I mean, there is not a member of the FERC sitting in the commission. They're not an intervener to the party of the case.
And there is no intention on the part of the Public Service Commission to contact the Federal Energy
Sir,
Regulatory Commission?
you're
Is that a
reading way
question?
more into my questions. I think you need to save this for the public comment. Ma'am, do you have a question about the process of the case? Okay, let me.
And I appreciate that I have this chance to ask the questions because otherwise I had.
Step just a little bit closer.
Thank you for the opportunity to pose questions because I had questions in my comments that I wasn't even sure made sense. So I just have two.
Okay.
So the first one is, and you may say this doesn't fit, but are there emissions controls requirements?
Again, that goes as part of your comments. That needs to be part of your comments.
All right.
Okay.
What about the cost of service study? Can they be restricted to a different class so that the data centers that create the need
That would be
pay
something
for it?
you would include in part of your public comments. This really is the process of the case. What's the next step? That's all it is. I cannot provide details about what's in the application, what they're looking at. I think at this point we need to move on into the public. I think we need to move on into the public comment period. Do you have a specific? Okay.
I did not hear your name and your position. I know these are the commissioners. Could we please have their names so we know who our commissioners are?
They will introduce themselves here when we get ready to move into the public comment period. My name is Linda Bridwell. I'm the Executive Director of the Public Service Commission. So let me make sure I put this up, and we're going to leave this up for the rest of the duration. So again, I mentioned, if you, and I appreciate that there are a lot of people that want to speak tonight and they want to ask questions, and we want to give them that opportunity. Again, the public hearing, the evidentiary hearing begins on August 4th. You may make public comment again in person, or you may make public comment virtually. At any time during the case, you can send a letter to us, a handwritten letter or a typed up letter by the U.S. Postal Service. Here's our address. You can also email us. This is the mailbox, that the email is psc.comment@ky.gov, or there's actually a web form that if you go into our website and you go to the Contact Us tab that drops down, go under the heading of to submit a comment or ask about a case. And that's where they will ask you what's the case number. You put in 2025-00045, and it comes up with a box, you put your name in and what your comment is, and that immediately, all of that goes into the case record that's on our website that's viewable by everyone in the case as well as the public. 2025-00045. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the commissioners because I know there's a lot of people who want to speak tonight, so that we can get started. They will introduce themselves and we'll get going. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? That's better. Okay. You have to get right up on these mics. I'm assuming that one's going to be the same way, so it's a little awkward, but you have to get real close to them. My name is Angie Hatton. I am chair of the Kentucky Public Service Commission, and joining me tonight are Commissioners Mary Pat Regan and Andrew Wood, who, this is Andrew Wood's first public comment hearing. He just joined us last week, was just appointed. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your interest. Public comment sessions like this are not something that's required of the Public Service Commission, but we try to do it, and in the ratepayers service area for every case that is going to have a major impact on ratepayers. So we are happy to be here and hear everything that you have to say. So to reiterate the point made during the overview, we're here to receive comments. That's the role and the obligation of the Public Service Commission to ensure that LG&E KU's requests are both necessary and are not wastefully duplicative. And we understand that in any case proceeding like this, there are going to be passionate opinions and ideas, and sometimes there are emotions associated with those opinions. I'll ask that everyone just remain respectful and considerate of one another. Don't speak while other people are at the microphone, and I don't mind people bringing in signs. I want us to remain orderly so that everyone's comment can be heard, because this is going to be part of the public record. We're going to have a video of tonight's proceeding in the actual case record. So you're going to be part of the record if you testify tonight. We, as the adjudicators, don't need to express opinions. We are listening. We haven't prejudged this case. So I hope you understand that we can answer your questions. Okay. There's a whole bunch more to repeat, the things I just said, that we get the same questions every time we do these, that people are frustrated that we don't answer questions tonight. But if you've ever watched any of the Public Service Commission hearings, you will see that very often the commissioners will ask questions of the witnesses that we heard at public comment hearings. Your public comments are important to us. We will read them. If you email or submit online comment or write us letters, they do get read and they do get made part of the record. Given the number of participants tonight, we are going to limit comments to 5 minutes each. I ask you to please adhere to the 5 minutes. We'll give you a warning when you have 1 minute left. Commissioner Regan's going to do the timing for me. Thank you, Commissioner Regan. That way, it's a courtesy so that everyone gets a chance to speak without everyone having to stay till midnight. So I know some of you feel strongly enough you could talk for 2 hours, and if you feel that strongly, write us an email that long, or send us public comment in another way. But for tonight, we're going to do 5 minutes each. You will have other opportunities, as Linda said, to give public comment on the day of the hearing, which I think is August 5th. August 4th. We will take public comments that day. You can sign up the day before if you want to give a online public comment, or you may arrive in person and give public comment that morning at 9 a.m. before the hearing. We don't start the hearing until people are finished with their public comments, so you'll have that opportunity as well. You can mail us comments at PSC. P.O. Box 615-211 Sauer Boulevard in Frankfort, 40602, or email us comments at psc.comment@ky.gov. And all of this information, including all of the case files, are available on the PSC's website, which is psc.ky.gov. And you can just look under the Contact Us tab for all of this information. You can use the case number that Linda provided you, 2025-00045, to look up everything that has been filed in the case. You can see all of the case filings there. So, with that, I have a list of everyone who signed in, and whether or not you indicated that you wanted to speak, you will have an opportunity. I'm going to first go through the list of folks who indicated yes, they do want to speak, and then I'll go back and give anyone here who changed their mind and has now decided they want to speak an opportunity to speak. So I'll go through once with all the ones who indicated yes, and then I'll open it up to anyone else. When I call your name, apologies in advance for mispronunciations. I'm going to do my best. Just come to this microphone here and tell us your name and address. I know that at least one person had an issue with giving an address. I'm not going to make you give your address. It does sort of provide a bit of weight to your testimony if we know that you're a ratepayer, or if you've been, people always are accused of shipping commenters in from out of state. So it just sort of lets us know whether you're local or not. But if you don't want to give your address, that's okay. You can identify yourself as a ratepayer, concerned citizen, member of a group, however else you want to. If you really don't want to give your address, no one's going to make you. But with that, the first person on my list that I had who indicated they wanted to speak looks like it may be Matt Smith. Matt J. Smith or Walt. Longdale Avenue. Did I get it totally wrong? Yeah. Come to the microphone, please, and tell me your actual name, and then Commissioner Regan will start the time.
Matt Singleton.
Singleton. Okay, so sorry about that. My handwriting is atrocious. I have no room to judge, but please, go right ahead.
Essentially, the biggest issue to me is just the unaccountability that I've seen in this whole process. I feel like elected officials need to be involved. However, I did hear earlier that y'all are underneath the governor. And so I think people ought to go to the governor and seek their grievances if there is some issue that you feel with this. And obviously, he's already ran his election cycle, so the only thing to seek would be impeachment. But generally, the Fourth Amendment, I believe, gets contradicted a lot in this. I do think that, like, when we start talking about the zoning and what that does to other people's property and the neighborhoods out there, with the issues of the noise pollution and the water pollution and the energy intake, I think that it sounds pretty damaging. Usually the gist is, well, at least we're going to help the economy, but it doesn't appear that that's going to happen either. Meanwhile, the purpose of a data center seems a little bit elusive to me. The idea of collecting all the local data and all the local businesses, there's a lot of scariness about that. What happens if they say, well, let's take all the data that's being collected in your local drug pharmacy or your medical offices? What kind of records can they bring out of the public? Now, some of that I hope y'all have got figured out because of HIPAA laws that would kind of contradict those. But essentially, there's just a lot of no deal in the deal. And from what I've kind of seen, it seems like that the deal was already set and made even before the first public hearing. But essentially, I would just ask we the people to seek into this a little bit more and seek for some accountability. I do appreciate you taking your time here, but since we really have no logical way to know that you're really listening to what we're saying, basically all we can do is just, say what the truth is. And, I hope you do. I hope you do take this as a note and consider these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Rob Madel? It looks like Maedl. How close did I get? Okay. Sorry about that. Just tell us your name and address and we'll start talking.
Rob Mail, Louisville 40216.
Thank you.
I took a look at the documents provided to the PSC from LG&E. I am concerned that LG&E is meeting its requirements, as you all showed in the earlier slide, and reliable and being able to distribute all that energy. When the LG&E will not be able to complete it, it doesn't look like LG&E is going to be able to complete its projects, if I'm reading correctly, in time for there to be, a significant amount of margin. With single-digit margins within 5 years, if I'm reading correctly, for available power. That's mainly my concern there when it comes to what I read. I'm sure other people will bring other concerns, but that's my main concern there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Sam Peterworth. Yeah, you have to get real close to it. If you'll just tell us your full name and address.
I'm Sam Peterworth, and I live at 2005 Eastern Parkway. After looking over LG&E/KU's plan, I can confidently say it's a gamble. An expensive and environmentally harmful gamble. First of all, building power plants powered by fossil fuels has no real benefit to people. It will continue to contribute to harmful emissions that put stress on our environment in ways like adding to the greenhouse effect, which causes global warming. I'm going to take a stand for my future because other people won't. LG&E/KU proposed a total amount of 0 renewable ideas for the lavish project that once again is a complete gamble. Which brings me to my second point. LG&E/KU are creating this infrastructure for big tech companies that haven't even confirmed if they will be here or not. LG&E/KU is going to take that risk anyway, which will raise prices for the already struggling families in the surrounding territories. In conclusion, a gamble this expensive is not worth it. Thanks.
Thank you. Tina Burnell.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. We do appreciate you coming out to our community to listen to our concerns. I think, as you can see, most of us are working on little bits and pieces of information and really don't understand the fullness of what is going on. I am operating from the understanding that the certificate of public necessity and need is being generated by the desire for the data centers. And for the energy and infrastructure that it is going to take for those things to be implemented. So I want to address the environmental cost. I think the environmental cost is unacceptable. Data centers are notorious for their enormous energy and water consumption. It puts corporate convenience and profit ahead of community welfare. Second, the impact on our quality of life is significant. These centers generate 24/7 constant noise 24/7. And if you have not been out in the area where they want to build this, there's a lot of residential homes out there. And there is also, less than a mile away, a developer who is actually still building apartments there. So less than a mile, we have a large, massive apartment complex going in. They have already destroyed 95 acres of trees on this lot. So we're looking at a lot of damage. a lot of damage in a very small area where you have a lot of people who live in poverty and their lives and their quality of life is not being considered. The economic benefits are exaggerated. The largest economic benefit is going to go to the developers, not to the community. Our state passed legislation to give the data centers tax incentives, but the ongoing uncalculated cost is going to be passed on to the ratepayers, and that is certainly unfair. Lastly, there has been a lack of transparency and meaningful public input here in our city. I live less than 2 miles from where the proposed data center is going. They've not held any public meetings to answer our questions, to share information. We are literally operating from the very, very minute amount of public information that is available. I have twice submitted a request to Powerhouse Data, Poe Companies, and Mayor Greenberg requesting that they host a community meeting. I have not received a single response. Our community deserves the opportunity to ask questions, to express concerns, and to receive clear, transparent information. This is the foundation of meaningful civic engagement. All neighborhoods deserve to be heard. The disconnect between the responsibility that they want to pass on to ratepayers and our representation is deeply concerning. Many residents feel that they have been left out of the process, largely due to the absence of a rezoning requirement. In Oldham County, they at least needed a rezoning. We didn't need that here in Louisville. So a lot of people were completely left in the dark, and a lot of people just don't understand the process. And as LG&E ratepayers, we are expected to shoulder the financial burden of the energy infrastructure needed for this project. So the very least they can do is host community meetings and communicate with us about what their plans are. Help us understand what is going on. Tell us what your plans are, what the benefit is to us, what the cost is to us. It's wrong for us to be left in the dark and to shoulder the expense of what they want to do. Thank you.
Ann Ramsey.
Ann Ramser, Louisville, Kentucky.
Ramser. I apologize. I thought that was a lie.
4214.
Thank you.
I have some concerns. A lot of them have already been expressed. You're deciding whether or not the buildings or the power plants are needed, but you're not looking at the cost till afterwards. To me, that seems a little bit backwards, because we're having the cost is going to be shouldered by you're looking at them, and they don't know what's coming down the pike. And then as the concerns with the data centers also, my concern is that what if the data centers don't come here? In Oldham County, they didn't. So if they don't come, but the generators or the plants are built, we're still paying. And that's just not right. Thank you so much for being here and listening to us. Thank you.
Claude Stevens.
So we're asked to speak about, is it wasteful? Does it meet a need? Whether or not this application is wasteful and whether it serves a need will always depend on your point of view and who is being served. If this project serves local citizens and local businesses, then perhaps. But we have learned that a large percentage of the generation covered with this application is potentially for data centers. If that is true, why would citizens want to support profit for billion-dollar private companies? That's public subsidized profit of private companies. Companies that largely don't serve the local community. They don't hire a lot of people, and the people that are served by the energy generated and consumed by those data centers probably doesn't stay in this state. It goes potentially all over the world. Further, money put into these projects delay or displace our community goals to clean up our energy locally. Let's spend our first dollars to clean up our carbon-rich generation that's here locally. So I give LG&E a vote of no confidence when it comes to a clean energy future. So I give it a vote of no confidence for this application.
Sam Avery.
Thank you all for being here this evening and for this opportunity. In February of 2020, the people of Louisville, through their elected representatives in Metro Council, resolved to convert from fossil fuel to 100% renewable energy. The Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville, as you can see here, a private voluntary citizens organization, of which I am a member, introduced and lobbied for the passage of that resolution. We have made incremental progress toward its implementation through energy efficiency and rooftop solar, but we are only now beginning to plan for the larger scale transition. Several members of the Metro Council and the Mayor's Office of Sustainability are currently considering several options, including a utility-scale solar installation that would provide 100% of the electrical needs for the city government operations by 2030. This is the first goal of the resolution. Data centers, should they be allowed here, can exist only in absolute contradiction to the plans Louisville has made for a financially viable and environmentally livable future. Data centers create enormous new demand for electrical generation, far beyond anything that can be supplied by renewable energy in the foreseeable future. And they will cost LG&E ratepayers billions of dollars in fossil fuel infrastructure that is likely to be banned worldwide long before it is paid for. The people of Louisville will have no option but to continue the degradation of the Earth's climate and become dependent upon stranded assets. Clean, carbon-free energy, the stated goal of this city, will become impossible to achieve. You're going to hear a lot about market demand for electricity. Market demand for goods and services is the muscle of economic function. But what about the brain of economic function? What about thought and deliberation, quality of life, conscious intention for the future? Do we sacrifice intelligent circumspection of the world around us whenever we encounter market demand? Are we not, as a living city, more than an economy? If plans for extended infrastructure conflict with the stated goals and priorities of a community, the Public Service Commission should not provide that infrastructure, with a certificate of convenience and necessity. Thank you very much.
Judy Lippman. Please correct me if that was mispronunciation.
That was correct. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. And boy, do I salute the folks who just spoke very much. I'm really brand new to this whole awareness, but it raises a number of questions to me, and I speak from my newness of awareness. What is the big rush? What is the big rush? It looks like hurry up and get this taken care of, get this approved. Whether or not we actually need it, whether or not we're going to have data centers coming, and whose benefits and who pays, who gets hurt and who benefits. And again, it's those who have the money, who are doing the building of it, certainly are going to benefit. And we are going to have to end up dealing with the environmental pollution from these facilities if they go ahead, plus the data centers. And we hear about the water. If we facilitate the accommodation of data centers coming here to our community, does that mean the Ohio River gets sucked up dry? We just heard on the radio and TV yesterday about cities sinking because the groundwater is being sucked up, and cities actually are sinking. So look, what matters? Does the profit right now matter? Is that the thing that matters the most? And what about the whole thing about getting rid of our carbon emission? And I noticed that in Kentucky we passed in our legislature support of coal still because we have coal here. Nonetheless, it's direct conflict to saving our environment as best we can. Also, what about LG&E having sessions? What about them having public sessions, coming to our neighborhoods and talking about what they want to do and what it's going to mean and why should they do it? Why should we support them? They can enlist support or everything else under the sun by helping people understand. This body of people here, in my guess, is pretty well informed, those who are here today. And I don't include myself in that in being well informed. But how do you get informed? You have to study. You have to do research. You have to look at historical evidence, too, in order to deal with what is being proposed now, what you're being asked to approve, necessity, convenience of LG&E and PSC, who is it, PPL, everybody else, necessity and convenience. That's what capitalist society is all about, is business, building business, supporting business. But the human element, the everyday person, the everyday citizen deserves understanding, deserves information. Thank you.
Wallace McMullen. And if we could, I've not been remembering to remind everyone to say full name and address, but that way if I've butchered your name, we get your actual name on the record.
Yeah, you did fine. I'm Wallace McMullen, live at 4324 Dover Road, zip 40216.
Thank you.
In 2016, LG&E built a gas-fired power plant at the Cane Run site for $590 million, and it's 650 megawatts of generating capacity, plus or minus 20. I'm not totally certain of the number, but it's about 650. Today we are discussing LG&E proposing to build 2 power plant units that are essentially the same size, and the price tag has suddenly jumped up to twice as much or more, which is puzzling to me. I have heard no explanation from the companies or anyone else as to why these fossil fuel plants are now so much more expensive. PSC commissioners, I say, please examine the amounts of money that you authorize very carefully. It appears from these numbers that there's a high potential for waste, fraud, and abuse in the charges that LG&E wants their customers to ultimately pay. Lonnie Belair, the LG&E executive, stated in the 24 IRP hearing for LG&E KU that without data center growth, it would not make sense to build new generation. So this CPCN case is, to a large extent, about building new gas plants to serve the needs of data centers. Well, as other speakers have said, so we're being asked to pay for major new generating capacity, which is expensive, but it's entirely on speculation, which is wrong for us ratepayers. To the best of my knowledge, they have no definite data center contracts or firm proposals or permits. It's all speculation. Well, we ratepayers don't get a return on equity from capital investments. Only LG&E does. We should not pay for one private company's investment, which creates a large electric load, but does little for public good. I'd say, please allocate the cost for any capital investments, generating investments, in accordance with the principle that a public electric utility is a public utility, not an operation to extract money from captive ratepayers. I say, also, please do not authorize expensive construction of new generation, which is currently entirely speculative. At the current authorized level of return on equity, the companies can make a lot of money on these speculative capital investments. But we ratepayers will get screwed on such a scheme. I know of no large data center in the company service area which is close to becoming a reality. So please do not authorize the proposed billions of speculative expensive generation investments that we ratepayers will likely be charged for without a solid, validated plan that verifies the need for such additional generation to meet additional load. Further, the rate of return of equity for these companies is too darn high, which hits us ratepayer customers with high bills. Some of the experts I've been reading, such as Mark Ellis, the former chief executive of corporate strategy for Sempra, he advocates that a fair return on equity for these Kentucky companies would be at least 2% less than the 10.9% they're currently seeking. RMI currently agrees, and I'll come up with better references in a written comment. But no wonder they want to make equity investments on speculation. It's making the companies rich at the current level of return on investment. They are getting about a 17% profit from this schema. I urge the Commission to critically examine the level of return on equity for LG&E KU and to reduce that level of return on equity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Charles Zeller.
I'm going to give you an A for pronouncing it.
Oh, thank you.
How's that? My name is Charles Zeller. I am here because I live within 2 miles of Mill Creek. I bought there over 30 years ago. What you all are proposing, or the application to you all has been, is going to ruin my way of life. I've already found because the PSC allowed LG&E to put in smart meters, I've lost trees. I don't have birds or bees. I don't have flowers around my house because of all the smart meters that are running. They now have a liability against them because I told them not to put them in around my house. You all were given the authority by the Kentucky Constitution at Section 195 to control corporations. They're not to take away the people's rights. But yet they continue to do that. They damage us by the radiation that those towers and the smart meters put out. I have been doing for the last 30 years, removing all that stuff out of my house and trying to keep it out. But y'all keep allowing them to put more in. What are you going to do with the data centers? The data centers have already proven. Go to U of L and they will tell you. The education goes down. The people get sicker. Everybody in this room knows that radiation produces cancer. But yet, we do nothing, or you do nothing, to stop it. So, I'm asking you to figure out a way to stop it. I'm also looking at the fact that I do know that you, as a member of the PSC, also took the oath to the Kentucky Constitution called 228. The remedy to 228 is 229. But you all are charged with the idea. You're charged with defending and protecting the people's rights from Section 1 to Section 28. And anything that's repugnant to that section is to be ignored, reviewed, and rebuked. In one section there it says absolute and arbitrary power over the lives, liberty, and property of free men exists nowhere in a republic, not even amongst the largest majority. That means all these people out here have a right to enjoy their life, their property, but yet what LG&E does with their electricity, they take that away. They don't do anything to protect the people. And you say, well, that's going to cost something. Sometimes that's called the cost of doing business. But the rate increase that you all have looked at, that's on this list that I got, says it can go into effect on July 1. So I'm going to ask you all a question. Are you all going to allow them to increase the rates? Because July 1, 2025 has already passed. That is a violation of the Constitution to allow them to do that kind of thing. That's retroactive. You all have to stand up with backbone and tell them what they can and cannot do. A gentleman has already talked to this group about investments. And they're using our money to make investments so that they can make more money. I think you ought to go and take all of the presidents of these corporations and chop their bonuses off and tell them they can't charge more than this. Something that's reasonable to protect the people. And I'm also going to say that from this time on, if something is not done to help the people, there is a liability that's going to be created by this business that you will have to assume some personal and public liability for. That's all.
Thank you, and well timed. You had about 8 seconds left, I think. Ken Shapiro? Oh, and I apologize. I skipped Kathy Little. Will be. I can let you come on up, Mr. Shapiro, or who y'all can fight about it. It doesn't matter. But Kathy Little was next on my list. I apologize.
Thank you for allowing me to speak at this public comment meeting. My name is Kathy Little, and I live at 5307 Cane Run Road, Louisville, Kentucky, District 1, the home of both of the hyperscale projects, the BESS and the data center. And I am in one of the two fence line communities, probably feet away from the first battery. And I am terrified. It's peculiar that whoever is behind the data center and the BESS has not necessarily respected the process to come to our communities and speak, and did quite the opposite, crickets, which again raises a concern of who's really behind this. I've asked for neighborhood meetings. I have emails to show on request. LG&E has refused to answer one way or the other. I've contacted you guys. I've contacted District 1, and they in turn have contacted LG&E, and I've heard nothing. They pretty much say nothing, and so therefore nothing is ever done. I am asking you, as regulators of the proposed BES, to intervene and ask that a public or District 1 meeting be held. It would not be unreasonable to ask for those living in District 1, very, very close to either project, and they should allow questions, and they ought to offer information. By not having meetings and therefore suppressing the voices in these communities, it would be grossly negligent. Yet that is what has happened. Constituents don't necessarily show up for these types of meetings when both the developer and LG&E have been successful in suppressing information via silence from those for those who have the most to lose. It's been successful for them in this case. I was told over the phone by Olivia Bennett, who is the legislative assistant in District 1, that she cannot talk about the BES and the data center in the same sentence. And that was from her to me. In the application for the BES permit, LG&E has mentioned that BES has been exempted from the noise ordinance. Is this due to the mayor's BES codification? That would mean they wouldn't necessarily have to mitigate the noise. Would that be called favoritism or cronyism toward the utility, toward the mayor? There are several hundred people living in the R4 and C areas, apartments, that will be subjected to loud noise. Example, one battery pack, and they have 544 of them that they will put over in that area. They can release 97 decibels at the source. It is my understanding that we have been selectively removed from the protection of the noise ordinance. Might I ask your opinion on our subjected boot from the noise ordinance? The public should not be forced to fund this data center. Costs passed on to ratepayers based on speculation as to whether a developer can find customers and seek long-term contracts is a gamble and something a ratepayer should not have to finance. This case number is 2025-00045. I thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. And thanks, Mr. Shapiro, your turn now.
Thank you for being here and listening to our comments. I don't think any of us, I think all of us are glad we don't have your job and are not in between the state legislature and economic development and the people in this room, which seems to be where you are. I came tonight prepared to, my name is Ken Shapiro. I live here in Prospect, Kentucky. I think you've got my address. I'm an LG&E ratepayer, and I came here tonight armed with all kinds of facts and figures, but I think what you're hearing from this audience tonight speaks louder than those numbers, perhaps. And I'll just limit myself number-wise to one thing. The people in Louisville, in this area, or in the LG&E service zone, according to their own application, to LG&E's application in this case, have reduced their energy use over the last 10 years significantly. And in fact, if they look into the immediate near term, they don't see a significant increase by all the users who are here in this room or in the service area that are not here. Where they do see an increase is in economic development activity and primarily in data centers. Now, economic development activity that creates jobs and growth and gives people opportunities and creates wealth in the community, that's one thing. But that's not what we're hearing from this data center. The developers in this data center, the very limited opportunities we've had to address them and ask them questions about what this data center will do for us, are non-committal. How many jobs will it create? Well, we don't know. What kinds of jobs? Well, we don't know. What will the data center produce? What kind of data are we crunching in there? Are we making cryptocurrency there? Are we creating artificial intelligence in there? Is it one user? Is it multiple users? The developers answer, well, we don't know. We'll figure that out. So when we read the fine print and understand that this data center is going to use up to 500 megawatts of electricity, we as members of the community ask, why is it that we paid half $500 million or supported a $500 million investment in the Cane Run Road natural gas generating facility that was installed in 2016 for our needs, for the electricity that we at the time were anticipated to use or were using. And now a data center can move in with one fell swoop. A developer can come in and demand LG&E provide them 72% of that plant, having not paid a dime. That's our power. That was the power that you decided as a Public Service Commission it was in our benefit to build for us. Now, if the developers do end up mining cryptocurrency in this data center that they build, that's literally the equivalent of turning electricity into money. I'm not going to get any money, I don't think. None of the people in this room will get any of that money. And yet, we may be asked to subsidize the construction of power to power this facility. Of course, that's a rate case issue, and that's a different issue than we're here to talk about tonight. But I don't want to get into the numbers anymore, because the more I listened tonight, the more I was reminded of the great Kentucky historian and author, Harry Caudell, who in the early 1960s wrote a wonderful book, and I think every Kentuckian who hasn't read it should read it, and think about it in the context of what's happening right now. He wrote a book about what happened to our state, to what happened to Kentucky, to the Appalachian region of this great, beautiful Commonwealth that we live in at the turn of the century, at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, when industrialists and financiers and coal barons saw the future on the wall. And what they saw was there was going to be an industrial boom, the likes of which nobody had ever seen. And they conspired together with their local politicians in those hills to deprive the residents of the Appalachian Mountains of any fair shake at all, and made them and coerced them and convinced them to sign over broad form deeds that gave mineral rights in perpetuity to the coal companies. And the fallout from that's my 4-minute warning. Thank you. The fallout from that we're still feeling today. And so have all the people from that region of Kentucky who still are suffering health effects, have had their waters poisoned, their homeland environmentally destroyed, and in a way have been slaves to that coal industry ever since. And what I would ask you as a Public Service Commission, working on our behalf, all the people here and all the people who aren't here, is please remember history, because those who do not remember history are bound to repeat it. And I would say that at the dawn of the information age, which is where we are right now, the question is, are we going to benefit from this? What do the people who are going to pay the bill for this get for it? Or is this going to be like the dystopian movie, The Matrix, where human beings literally served as the fuel for these giant data centers that held an alternative reality? And of course, that was science fiction. But please do not make it our reality. I would hate for there have to be a book that's written called Night Comes to Louisville and the Ohio Valley. Thank you.
He asked if that was his 4-minute warning. Okay. Wallace? Kurt Wallace?
You have my information. Welcome for the first meeting. John, thank you. I wanted to discuss some of the issues that LG&E has sidestepped. I've driven by the Mill Creek Power site many times and called LG&E about toxic emissions and asked them to contact the EPA and file a report, because I could smell and I could taste the air quality as I drove past that. U of L has an EPA center. They have confirmed that 40 miles away in Oldham County, barium drops out of the sky from that site. And so we're talking about adding another 500 megawatts to that power generation site or any other. You're talking about another large increase of particulate matter containing arsenic, barium, and other toxic elements that would drop from the sky. It's like putting a teaspoon of hot cocoa or chocolate on in a glass of milk. The more you add, eventually it starts to drop in. And the air can't support the large amount of particulate that's going into the sky. So what does this do? It's xylene. It's the diesel exhaust for the backup generators is benzene, kerosene, particulate matter, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, arsenic, and barium. And some of the effects of those are asthma, premature birth, brain pathology, infant blindness, premature birth, immune disruption, sleep apnea, sudden infant death syndrome, neurotoxicity, fetal toxicity, low birth weight, developmental delay, cognitive impairment, blindness, neurological harm, pediatric asthma, epigenetic injury, fetal growth restriction, neurobehavior toxicity, developmental neurotoxicity, cancer, reduced fetal viability, teratogenic effects, birth defects, neurotoxicity, delayed development. And we're talking about putting a data center which would benefit from this increase in energy in an area that's already disadvantaged from toxic pollution. And so we're talking about injuring the next generation and the next generation after that based on a proposal by LG&E, which has not been adequately, has not shown the real harm to offset its alleged need. There is not a need for this center, so I would encourage the Public Service Commission to vote no. And should you fail to protect the people, this is formal notice of personal and individual liability for harm arising from data center projects and related utility actions. This is submitted by a member of the public attending this meeting, and I don't claim to represent anyone else because you have a duty under your Section 228 oath to protect the rights of the people, limit government interference in those rights, and provide benefit only with the consent of the people. We don't consent. Consent is not present. Continuing action without informed voluntary consent constitutes coercion. That's a police state. Coercion and color of law violations violate your oath under Section 228. We don't even know if this is a military operation, Stargate. The advanced collection of data, the synthesization of data, the biometric collection, how is this data being used? Some of these issues have been raised, but LG&E and the developers have been silent, thank you, on these issues. So the petition for remedy is to due to the grave risks associated with these hyperscale data centers, from injury and death, EMF, RF energy release, destruction of pollinators, and other harms, we are demanding that you accept 100 times the project cost as your personal individual liability, and it will remain on you personally and on the office until the harm has been mitigated. These data centers and what LG&E is proposing is not sufficiently bonded, so you will need to personally take that bond to protect all of us. If you make a decision to move forward with the LG&E application, you have that liability. And we don't want you to have that liability, but that's your decision. You represent us, and we're asking you to defend us. Thank you.
Ray Brundage.
Ladies, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Ladies, welcome to service here, and Mr. Bush, welcome to the first time in the barrel. I came here to ask for time to speak about two matters.
Will you tell us the correct pronunciation of your name and your address, please?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
No worries.
It's Ray Brundage, and it's
Brundage.
40204. Right. Two matters. One is that LG&E is, in my opinion, not really interested in public service. Their corporation, their ownership is in Pennsylvania. They sent their processing center over to St. Louis, Missouri, so even our bills that we pay here get sent to St. Louis to get processed. And recently I looked down on Bardstown Road, and they have put in what looks like transmission towers that you would see out in the country running along the restaurant road there. And the thing is, for the side streets coming on to Bardstown Road, which is a very heavily trafficked area, you can't see around them. The telephone poles were this big. Their metal service poles are this big. And so your visibility looking on oncoming traffic is shut off that much. And finally, another thing they did was they lowered the access boxes for their linemen down to the sidewalk level where they can just work on them there, but they're within 4 or 5 blocks of some elementary schools, so you have electrical boxes that school kids are exposed to. That's the kind of public service that they're doing. Secondly, the other thing that I wanted to mention is I'm pretty sure that the data center technology will change and will within the next 10 years, and we'll be ending up with a white elephant there. We'll be spending a lot of money for no reason. I spent 30 years in IT working mainframes to start with, and the nature of technology has changed, and these data centers are built on massive redundancy of data. And there's got to be a better way, and someone will find it, and we won't need these huge heat sink sort of things. Thank you very much.
Carolyn Cromer.
Hi, thanks for being here this evening. Carolyn Cromer, 1865 Princeton Drive in Louisville. So I'm looking at your all's mission. And as your executive director stated, the mission of the Kentucky Public Service Commission is to foster the provision of safe and reliable service at a reasonable price to the customers. I honestly have a hard time imagining a less safe proposal. 2 new fossil fuel plants producing energy at a time when we are literally, we are warming. We are all starting to feel the effects, the real effects of a warming planet because of fossil fuels. And we have been advised, there is lots of research, this is not a question anymore, this is really, we're well beyond any kind of questioning period as to what we need to do. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN's climate experts, as you all probably know, have recommended that we reach net zero by mid-century. So lower our emissions to roughly zero or being offset by mid-century. We're supposed to reach 50% by 2030. We haven't even really started to come down yet. And we definitely can't afford in our carbon budget 2 new fossil fuel energy plants. And I understand that the legislature of our Commonwealth, in their wisdom, has decided that we need to protect coal, but your all's mission is to protect us. And your all's mission is to keep us safe. That's your all's mandate, right? And this just isn't safe. It's not safe for you all. It's not safe for me. It's not safe for my kids. It's not safe for any of us. So that's sort of my first point. It's also supposed to be affordable. Green energy became the cheapest new energy, I think last year, maybe 2 years ago. It's not coal anymore, and it's not natural gas. So LG&E and KU are proposing an energy that is going to be more expensive to the people who are paying for it. And as so many people before me have pointed out, it's probably us, right? It's not going to be the shareholders of LG&E. It's going to be us who are going to pay for it. And I would prefer a renewable energy plant, please. That is the cheapest and the safest. So that is what follows under your mission. I have a 12-year-old son who I tried to convince to come tonight because I wanted him to see this process. I appreciate so much you all serving in this role. It's an important process for the public to take part in. Couldn't convince him to get here, even though I said, this is something that if it happens, we'll be paying for 40 years. As a stranded asset for 40 years. He'll be 52, roughly, maybe a little older, depending on when it starts, paying on something that shouldn't be built because of fossil fuels, probably isn't needed. This whole speculation issue, I'm honestly surprised we've even gotten to this point. LG&E and KU wants to do this on speculation? Really? 2 new power plants and not retiring a coal plant on a gamble? That doesn't make any sense to me. Talk about putting the cart before the horse, right? And on the backs of whom? On our backs? On the backs of the people who live around here? That whole decibel issue, the heavy metals that are dropping out, that is real stuff. We are all suffering from that already. So I urge you, I plead with you to please vote no on this. LG&E has not proven that it's needed, and they certainly are not doing it in the safest or cheapest manner. Thank you very much.
Kurt Allen. Or, I'm sorry, the address is College Drive. You have a better guess, or no? Starts with a K, KR. 1000 College Drive. Oh, that is, well, okay. I'm going to skip that one, but if that was meant you, I don't know. Don Essler. It does. How do you really say it?
My name is Don Erler. Just like the dairy, except no H. Gotcha. No trust fund, no balloons. I have some ice cream at home, sure. I'm a proud citizen of Oldham County. We're proud to have exposed a data center project in Oldham County that really had no legitimacy. And many of these data center projects really have no legitimacy. They're coming in with land grabbers, people looking for sites, and once they secure a site and an entitlement, especially in Kentucky, which has very little regulation for data centers, in Oldham County we had no mention of a data center. So we finally passed a moratorium to allow us to write some regulations. But the real travesty and the real concern is LG&E, KU, owned by PPL, is going out and soliciting back demand for data centers in this state and in Pennsylvania. They're using companies that are soliciting data center activities so that PPL and LG&E and KU can sell more power and build infrastructure from which they get their returns. We need to stop speculating on what the demand's going to be. Let's build the demand when it's there, and let's have the companies that demand the additional power pay for it. Very simple. Western Hospitality Partners, the group that came to Oldham County and proposed to put a 600 megawatt facility on a piece of farmland using a conditional use permit, not even bothering to follow the standard zoning protocols, is gone. So that 600 megawatts that LG&E thought they were going to supply is no longer demanded. Then they moved to another site, and they said, we need 150 megawatts at this other site. We passed a 150-day moratorium to allow us to write regulations, and once that moratorium went into effect and impacted them as well, they disappeared completely. So there's 750 megawatts that LG&E does not have to provide. When they're ready and sited properly and come into our communities in a reasonable manner and pay the bill and make a contract that says they're coming, then the Public Service Commission can authorize additional infrastructure to service that and make them pay the bill. But very simple, don't speculate, because you have 1 million people out there trying to make a buck by siting these when they really have no ability to build them unless they get through the regulations. It just doesn't make sense. So I really ask you to consider the demand before you authorize it. Thank you.
Bob DeVore.
Thank you, folks. It's an honor to be here. I'm Morwood DeVore. So there was a lot of good ideas and concerns what's happening today. A good thing about data center you have, and the idea is that, yeah, it might be huge now, but 10 years from now, it could be a small situation where that, at one time we had 8-track tapes, now we have thumb drives. So technology is going to go leaps and bounds. So the question is, do we really need that that center, and it's going to be relevant 10, 20, 30 years from now? Is a really good question. Second, they're talking about renewable energy. Peter Hayes brought up a good point. We generate a lot of trash in Louisville and across the country. Why not take that trash and take that and develop renewable energy where you can have diesel fuel, aviation fuel, and methane fuel? Maybe one of those fuels you can take and build a plant where you can utilize our usage of that fuel and create a better, cleaner, and effective plant that will help all of us instead of buying energy from Indiana. Now, I've talked to a young man at 21 years old. He is telling me that this is what's happening even today. And you look at page 2 of your LG&E bill, you'll find out there's a fee on there that takes a transfer fee between Indiana and us, because we cannot supply, or LG&E cannot supply, the right amount of energy for our citizens in Louisville, because right now it's just expanding. There's a lot of folks moving in, and they cannot supply that. So why can't we look forward, utilizing that type of product? You're going to create jobs, you create a cleaner environment, and at the same time, now you're satisfying the customer first. So you would talk to Peter Hayes on that point. I think it'd be fantastic. My name is Robert DeVore. My address is 8223 Rochelle Road, Louisville, Kentucky. And I've been here for over 15, 20 years. My dad's been here for a long time. So we're Metro Louisville citizens, and we're proud of it. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Larry Howard Kerr. I am trying.
I'm just one of those hyphenated people.
Is it Hal Kerr?
How Kerr.
Okay.
Yes, I worked for the Catholic Church for 28 years, in which we did a lot of, this was in Colorado, did a lot of work with hearings like this and working with XL Energy. So the energy here can make a difference as long as there's the conscience of public servants like yourself. But here, I just started getting informed about this one. Here you got LG&E that has a monopoly, a guaranteed profit. I would say that most of the people here don't have guaranteed raise in income. And they show no effort to put renewables on the plate. That's pretty good. I worry about corruption and lobbying influence, because that's happened particularly with solar, when solar was creating more jobs than coal was. And so there was a lot of lobby money that came in For 2 years, hundreds of thousands. I happen to believe in the adage that the economy is for people, not people for the economy. And I guess I would also say that can't serve both God and money. So I just hope that y'all will listen to this and not get trapped in the sequence. That was one of the main things I wanted to bring up. The sequence of decisions are sometimes leaving people out. So if you have, like when she was saying, a decision could be made on this, and then later we'll make a decision on whether you get the rate increase. Well, that's crazy. You got to take the whole thing together. Not the sequence is very much important. I'm a woodworker, and I have trouble sometimes with sequence and realize that, oh yeah, I had to do that one before I did this one. So I just commend the community for getting involved, and I'll try to join you in some way. Thank you.
Sarah Lynn Cunningham.
I am Sarah Lynn Cunningham. I live at 2207 Lauderdale Road, 40205. I am the executive director of the Louisville Climate Action Network, which currently is 63 entities, nonprofits, churches, 1 Jewish temple, 3 or 4 educational institutions, and the rest are for-profit businesses. I am a licensed professional engineer in Kentucky. But probably the most important thing I am, really, okay. Probably the most important thing I am, besides being an engineer, is a grandmother. And I am plenty old enough to retire. I collect a civil servant pension, but I'm still working full-time because of grandchildren. And I hope that the rest of our society would think that way. You might think my #1 concern right now is climate, and it is, but the other thing that really worries me is democracy. It's very clear here tonight, people don't feel heard, they don't feel like they're getting a fair shake, they feel like they're getting conscripted into somebody else's for-profit business without even being told what's going on. Now, I understand you don't make the rules. The legislature makes the rules. It's your job to interpret them and apply them to this project. It is not easy. But I hope that wherever you can try to affirm the public interest, affirm the climate, and affirm the customers. I also want to say, this may be not a legalistic comment, but I don't think this project is convenient or a necessity. I think we don't have to do this, and it surely, if we're going to do it, we could do it better. And one test would be if the Public Service Commission could ask LG&E, would your would-be clients be willing to pay the full cost of this new power plant, or power plants plural? Because if they are, you could argue that might be fair. But unless and until they're willing to pay for the full cost plus the profits to the stockholders, it's not really fair, it's not really convenient, it's not really a necessity. And as everybody else has said, we are running out of time. We've had too many people get killed in floods in Kentucky and Texas and everywhere else. We've had too many fires. We've had too many landslides. You name it, extreme weather is becoming normal on the 6 o'clock news. I don't know when we're going to stop conscripting the public to killing ourselves this way. So I came here with 4 pages of notes, and I kept editing them. When I really get finished, I'll submit them digitally. Because everybody else has beaten me to the punch on most of the points, and you probably have a long drive home, so I don't want to just keep repeating them. But I just think this is the time, if ever there were a time for standing up for the people and being gutsy, I realize you got to stick within the limits of the law. Now would be the time, please. Thank you.
Philip Atkinson.
Philip Atkinson, 40272, Louisville, Kentucky. We've heard a lot of good comments tonight, and I can't add to them, but I do see an overwhelming presence of senior citizens who are here. A lot of us senior citizens, including myself, receive Social Security. And we got a 2.5% increase January 1st, 2025. I believe, and my numbers may be a little off, but I believe the proposal is an 8.3% increase in electricity and a 14% increase in gas. That is 4 times the inflation rate and what we received in Social Security. You're really putting pressure on low-income people to pay for a facility that we don't even know it's going to show up. We know it's going to harm our atmosphere by putting more barium into it, and it's going to harm the people that live in that area who are low-income, hard-working, blue-collar people, and a lot of senior citizens, and it feels like that they're being taken advantage of so that LG&E can increase their profits. And I'm just not for it, and I appreciate you guys coming out. I'm disappointed that LG&E didn't send out a representative to hear all of this and to answer some of our concerns. Thank you.
They are here.
Okay, Maddox Miller. Pass. Ashley Grace. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Oh, yeah, that was pretty easy.
Yeah. I'm Ashley Grace. I live at 2605 McCoy Way in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm here because for the same reason that all my fellow citizens have made their comments, I haven't heard a single comment in support of this new power plant. I think that's pretty telling. I have a 4-year-old, and I always think about him when I think about decisions that go far into the future. And this potential project is something that is not good for us now and won't be good for him in 40 years when this is still something that needs to be paid for, needs to be cleaned up after. Now, I won't belabor the point that many of my fellow citizens have already brought up, but Louisville is pretty low on the air pollution ranking for the United States already. In fact, the American Lung Association just brought out a new ranking for this year in April, and Louisville fell about 22 points. We are now in 88th place for the cities in the United States for air pollution. And fossil fuel power plants are only going to make that worse. And I don't know how much everyone knows how air pollution affects individuals, but it increases childhood asthma, which is a problem in my family. And believe me, if you've ever seen a child drowning on dry land who cannot breathe because of the air around them, you would do anything you could to stop it. Anything that brings more air pollution to our region is a poor idea, in my opinion. As many people have already brought up, this power plant is going to cost a lot of money. And as the project goes on, it's likely to get exponentially more expensive. I've never heard of an infrastructure project that was finished on time and within the original parameters. Now, on the other hand, if you put in renewable energy, hydro, solar, wind, air pollution isn't a problem. And every single one of those, the costs is going exponentially down. That power could be used forever. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Bunny Spalding. Yeah, Bunny Spalding, Shelby Road. David Hain.
Good evening. I'm David Hine. I live in LaGrange, Kentucky. Appreciate you providing this opportunity for us to give some public comments. You may wonder why I'm here from LaGrange, Kentucky. And I'm not going to, there's been many good points made tonight about data centers and about electric rates and about climate change. I'm not going to focus on those things. I'm going to focus on air pollution, which has been brought up, and the public health. For a project, and also the viability of the data centers with the use of the natural gas power plants. So when you are proposing to build 2 new natural gas powered plants, you are going to increase the air pollution levels across the region, including where I live in LaGrange, Kentucky, to levels that are going to cause major health impact problems. There will be climate change as well, and that has been discussed by others, but my primary concern are the criteria pollutants that will be generated particularly by a natural gas powered plants, or 2 of them, because they are going to affect the health of everybody in the region. With respect to the rates, there is a hypothesis, and I understand there are LG&E people here, that that the justification for building these new gas-powered plants is to provide energy to the data centers, which currently, under what I would consider obsolete technology, require massive amounts of energy to cool their thousands of servers that they are maintaining. The idea that data centers will continue to pay large amounts of money to the utilities like LG&E to cool their servers is obsolete. If a data center continues to want to do that, they will go bankrupt, because the data centers that will flourish are not going to request massive amounts of power from the utilities. They are instead going to capture the heat from those servers and sell it to other people. So rather than paying LG&E for the power, they will keep the heat, divert it, and sell it. And that is the future of data centers in this country. I've been very much involved in the data centers in Oldham County. Here we're focusing on the natural gas powered plants. It doesn't make any sense fiscally or for the health of the community. Thank you very much.
Rob Houchins.
My name's Rob Houchins. I am 1400 Yeager Lane from Oldham County, Kentucky. I'll give you just a second here to give you a little history. A little over 70 years ago, the state of Kentucky came and took my grandfather Houchins' farm near Glasgow, Kentucky to build a reservoir. So there has a little bit of history because Grandpa, I don't believe, ever earned over minimum wage the rest of his life. So there are concerns when things happen and things happen in our community. Imagine my surprise earlier this year when I found out that where I sit to eat dinner most evenings, I would be looking out the window and be able to see a 75-foot tall data center through the trees in my backyard. So maybe in the summer I wouldn't see as much, but in the other times of the year I would see an awful lot. We're able to learn quickly and try to come and learn about data centers. I believe that our legislature put together a bill and they decided to give them a 50-year sales and use tax benefit. So they've allowed these companies to come in, these $1 billion, because the proposal for the data center was supposed to be 1.7 million square feet behind my house. It was supposed to be on 267 acres, and it was supposed to have 150 generators that would have diesel and things coming out of it. So for the backup process. So you can imagine my concern. At that point in time, then myself and several other people in Oldham County put together what we could do as citizens to figure out how to fight this. Well, fortunately, they pulled out. So I do, though, however, believe that what we were fighting there was them trying to put it where they wanted it and to go using conditional use processes and not do the proper regulations of zoning changes to try to put it where they wanted, which is next to power lines. So I understand that data centers need a lot of power. And so when you're talking about a 600 megawatt facility, that created a big amount of issue for us. We quickly became experts and we fought it, and the WHP pulled out. And so they said they don't want to build in Oldham County in either of the sites that were proposed. What I'm here today is not to repeat what has already been said, but to make a different proposal and ask a different question. And here's what it's based on. What it's based on is the Public Utility Commission of Ohio, PUCO, on July 9th, just last Wednesday, put together an order that culminates a regulatory saga that began in March of 2023, when American Electric Power, the subsidiary of AEP Ohio, imposed a moratorium on new data centers. What they did in this order is they put in a tariff. And this tariff comes and says that they have to commit for up to 12 years that they will use the 85% of what they say they're going to need. I understand that what LG&E is doing is following the law and saying they are asking for companies are asking for power commitments and they're complying. I'm not fighting against any of that. What I am saying is we need to put protections in place. What we're going to have if we don't have protections is that technology changes. What are we talking about with data centers? We're talking about today's technology. Well, we've talked about how astronauts can go to the moon using computer ability that today we carry around in our pocket called a phone in terms of the amount of power that they use and the amount of ability to compute. We know technology changes. What I'm very concerned with is that we'll build all this infrastructure. We'll put in all these additional plants, and then what happens if we don't put in these kind of tariffs? is that we'll end up with the people of our communities, the retired teachers, the families trying to raise their kids or put their kids in college. They'll be stuck with holding the bag. They'll be stuck paying the bill. So I understand that people like LG&E and companies like them, I should say, are trying to say, well, we're even going to give you a reduced rate because you use the same amount of power throughout the day. What I'm asking the Public Service Commission to do is this: protect us from getting stuck if the technology changes. PUCO has already done this. They've already said that they are now, and the agreement was July 9th, last Wednesday, to put in these tariffs. Just protect us. If we're going to have data centers, if we're going to do what the legislature wanted and bring data centers here, then protect our families, protect our neighbors, and protect us from bearing the burden of this bill. Thank you.
Jim Kidwell.
Jim Kidwell, 3302, no way. Yes, it is no way. NOE, like the school. I'm here to make a few points, and some of them have already been made with Mr. Shapiro. Sounds familiar. And this gentleman, and some of the other people about technology. And my point was that we started out with vinyl records. We went to tapes, we went to CDs, we went to iPods, we went to streaming, but each change happened faster. And too many people, particularly in supervisory roles, are still thinking about bringing this plant here will be just like it happened in 1950 when we brought the GE plant here. GE's been here for 75 years making appliances. These people coming in may not be here that long. And people have made that point already. We also need to be careful. You're the last bastion of hope we have. The legislature's been bought off, and the companies are shamelessly craving for profits now. They don't even cover it up anymore. So they're going to take us for every bit of money they can get. If you don't believe that, we have a vacant aluminum plant somewhere in the state from a few years ago that never got built. And we invested $15 million in that. And what kind of subsidies are we doing? So much of what we see and hear about all of these projects, all of the hidden costs have been put off book. But we have to pay them. They're out there, but you don't see them. There's almost no jobs after it's built. That's the problem. Tax money from people working is what we count on to make this a profitable endeavor for the people. The property around it and taking the property and building around it and ruining people's property values is a personal issue. And when they're there, they have the leverage to go to the legislature and say, we need to double our capacity here. And what are you going to do? Say no? I mean, they're politicians. If these people get up and leave because we won't do what they ask, then they're not going to get reelected with all this publicity. So they're going to get to grow in an unlimited fashion and no oversight. Are we going to watch these people? If they're that big and that important that they could come in here anonymously and take over this much of our process so that we don't see it, and they sneak around, then who's going to enforce the oversight? all the environmental laws, all of the workplace laws, all the financial laws. They'll just be running wild. So I find this an objectionable process, and I'm very skeptical about the technology. If we end up with vinyl record thinking in a music streaming age, we're off in a corner and we'll never succeed. Let the other states run on their knees to get these developments. We don't need them if we can't make them work for the people. Thank you.
Okay, and I have one final person that indicated they wanted to speak, and then we'll go back through and see if anyone else has changed their mind and would like to now. The last on my list is John Dethridge.
Greetings. My name is John Dethridge, 40026, Oldham County. I'm going to kind of go a different route. I'm here to talk to you first about smart meters. Now, during the winter, nobody read my meter for over 3 months. But every month I kept getting a bill. It was about $350, which is, pretty normal for a winter. And all of a sudden around March, an LG&E employee appeared in my lawn. And I went out and greeted him. "Where have you been?" He said, "Listen, we only have 11 meter readers for the whole shebang." And I said, "How can that possibly be?" He said, "They fired us all. There's 11 left. And once all the smart meters are installed, we won't have any employees doing this." And I said, "Well, how on earth am I going to know how much to pay if you don't come for 3 or 4 months?" He said, "You'll get the bill." And I did. It was $1,500 more on top of the $350 I was paying each of those months of estimated readings, which I about fell out of my chair. And I called LG&E and said, what is going on? The man said there's only 11 employees reading meters. And they said, "Well, we're switching to smart meters." I said, "Okay, what if I don't want a smart meter? Can I self-report? Can I call in or go?" I have the app. I have the LG&E app. Can I go on the app and report what my meter says? Because I don't want a smart meter. And they said, "Why don't you want a smart meter?" I said, "Because nobody can tell me how they work." So I'm going to fast forward to a month ago when a boy showed up in my yard with a smart meter. He was going to replace my meter. I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm going to give you a smart meter." I said, "No, you're not." He said, "Yeah, I have to do this." And I said, "How does it work? Does it go through my phone?" And I'm going to ask a bunch of rhetorical questions. I want everybody to think about these questions, including you. How does it transmit the signal to LG&E? Does it go through my phone? He said, "I don't know." Does it go through my Wi-Fi? He said, "I don't know." So he couldn't answer any of my questions. So I asked him politely to leave with his meter. And the next day, an LG&E representative called me, said, "I heard you had some concerns about our smart meter, Mr. Dethridge." And I said, "Yes, I do. How does it work?" "Well, I'm not really sure." "Well, how does it transmit?" "I don't know." "Well, there's these collectors on the poles." "Okay, yeah, I've seen one in my neighborhood and in all my travels around Louisville. I've seen 2 other collectors. How far do these things transmit? They said, well, we're not sure. I said, well, how many frequencies do they transmit? How much information can it give and return back to LG&E? Well, nobody knows. Well, I did my own research. These smart meters are made to be able to operate all of the smart appliances in your house. So if you have smart appliances, these meters can turn them on and off at will. So the lady that called, I said that to her, and she said, no, that's only if you sign up for that. I said, oh, okay, so like smart meters. I remember a couple years ago, y'all were talking about smart meters, and you said, well, only if you sign up for it. But now, you're forcing me to do it, and if I don't do it, I have to pay $30 a month for the young man to come out and read my meter. So that's not fair. I don't trust the signals that are coming to and fro the smart meter because nobody can answer any of my questions. So the lady said, listen, this was a Monday. She said, by Friday, you'll have a packet full of all the information LG&E has about smart meters. I said, that'd be great. That'd be great. Never came. Never came. The guy never came back with smart meter. The packet never came. Nobody can answer my questions. Nobody knows how it works. Nobody knows how many signals it transmits or how many signals it receives. They don't know how the power of it. They don't know how far it travels out to find the collector. And the last point is, Mr. Deathridge, it only transmits every 15 minutes for 12 seconds. Well, why does LG need to know how much power I use every 15 minutes? Well, I'm going to answer that question right now, and it's related to data centers. We're going to be all paying peak rates for all day long. So they're going to decide when to charge us more to feed the data center. And that's why it reads it every 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last on my list that said yes, but there were some that indicated maybe. And even if you said maybe and now you've decided to speak, you can raise your hand or come and form a line at the microphone. Or if you put no and you changed your mind and decided to speak, we're here to listen. If you want to come speak, I'll give you a few minutes to think about it. If you already went, we've learned our lesson about letting people go again because we did that at one time, and then everyone decided to go again.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared to be called second. I came pretty late and didn't have my notes.
Yeah, we do have someone who hasn't spoken. We'll let go, and you can absolutely do online comments the day of the hearing, in person the day of the hearing, email. Send us snail mail, various opportunities to get your thoughts in, sir. Tell us your full name and address, please.
Hi there. My name is Terry Hillary, and I'm in 40206. I am kind of piggybacking off what he just said. I like the idea of talking about the reason that the data centers are even coming in. The cost to the consumers increasing is one side effect, and then you get all these other side effects of the data center and the energy production centers and all that stuff. But basically, I see the reason they're coming in is they're trying to do extensive data mining from our private data, and I see that as a continual gross and egregious violation of our Fourth Amendment constitutional right to protect ourselves from unreasonable search and seizure. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're seizing our data, our information, and mining it for other purposes that we may or may not like, we don't want, and we're paying for it with the rates, with the rate hikes, with decreased water pressure, with having our land values going down because of the center structures around us, and then all the pollution and everything else. But the main point is, why are these data centers coming in? And it's to get information about us and from us that we may not want them to have. I'm done.
Thank you.
Hi. Nope. Hello? Hello? Okay.
Yeah, you just have to get really close to it.
Yeah. My name is Stephanie Bohr. I live at 720 Kirschway, Fairdale, Kentucky. I just wanted to say that in trying to research everything that has been going on with the various proposals, I saw that LG&E doesn't publicly disclose their profitability, only revenue, which is interesting considering some of the cost-saving measures that I've heard people talk about, and it doesn't seem like we're reaping any benefits of those cost savings, and people might be losing their jobs because of it too, from the sounds of it. Hopefully that's not true, but many of us know how that goes. And I just think that it's interesting that Louisvillians are being expected to see these plans as a benefit to the community and something that we should shoulder the financial burden of potentially, even though we know the risks and guaranteed impacts on public health and safety, the impacts to our water cleanliness and availability that we've seen in other areas with some of these measures implemented, the impacts on the land and air cleanliness, the construction damage to roads and other impediments and inconveniences that it'll cause, like traffic, and then obviously the constant light and noise that people have complained about with similar situations in other places for our neighborhoods. And somebody said something about even brand new apartment complexes that are being built that people will probably not want to live in, because people don't like living near things like that. The higher prices that one can assume will affect more than just residents once everyone starts paying higher prices, if that gets approved. Hopefully not. They say that it will bring in more business and jobs. A lot of people have wondered whether that will actually come to fruition, but we also already know that pay for the average worker isn't keeping up with inflation or productivity and hasn't for some time. Seems that the only ones that seek to benefit are the companies involved in these deals. Louisvillians have been working hard and campaigning to improve Louisville for those that live here by lowering the cost of living, bettering compensation and benefits, improving living conditions and access to resources, introducing trees and other greenery back into downtown and other areas of the metro to improve air quality, reduce the heat island effect, and just make the city more enjoyable to be in and attractive. I lost my spot. And create a more even spread overall quality of life across our city. We're asking to build a healthy, happy, and beautiful community. And for some reason, the only answer that we seem to be getting from some of our businesses and certain politicians is concrete and asphalt where woods used to be, warehouses where family farms and neighborhoods used to be, mountains and hills stripped for the lumber, rock, and coal and left barren and poisoned, pickleball courts where lush parks used to be, which thankfully so far hasn't become a thing, and somehow also taxpayer burden. And more than just Louisville or even Kentucky, folks are constantly being asked to sacrifice their health, time with their families, land, and tax dollars for these companies and their profits. But when do they ever give back to us? I think it's time that we change the way things have been operating and start holding these companies accountable and start building and prioritizing our people and communities rather than profit and company venture. And I really hope that our government here in Louisville and Kentucky really consider that when they decide on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I'm Sharon Lear, P.O. Box 91041, 40291, and I have some concerns. Data centers have a very short shelf life, you might say. 5 years, 10 years, very short. And these are monstrosity buildings. They're building one over in Clarksville, Indiana, and using gigantic cranes to assemble it and everything. And what kind, if this does materialize, what kind of security, bond, some sort of a way to pay for this monstrosity to be removed? They are major eyesores. Besides all the pollution with noise, the particulate matter to the lungs, and the water pollution, what type of cleanup? Are we going to have another small Superfund site of some sort? Is there going to be some way to protect the public and the land and the air and the water? Those are big, big concerns, long-term concerns, because a lot of times the buildings are made, they're built, and then they're waste. And I know that the computers can be removed, things like that, and they go to some sort of a, hopefully not just a particular landfill where there's pollution of the metals that are in the computer parts. However, another big concern, in a time when the federal government is taking away Medicare, Medicaid, and all sorts of things from people who don't have the money anyway to pay their bills, what are they going to do when they have no Medicare and Medicaid, no housing and things? How are they going to pay inflated rates with LG&E? Utilities are very important. We can't live without it anymore. And but to me, data centers are too old of technology. And I'd like to see it in an investment in better technology. France just installed the windmills, in a sense, with turbines that uses vibrations. No circles going. I mean, France is ahead of us on other types of technology. They put in the turbine trees 3, 5, 6 years ago. And we're still way back in the dark ages. If you've traveled to other countries, you know we've been in the dark ages for a long time here, and we're going back like another 100 years in our technology. And I'd like to see new technology looked into before something like this is invested in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your longevity here.
My name is Wyatt Little. I live over on 5307 Cane Run Road, right in front of the Cane Run generating plant. It's my front yard, basically. Just wanted to go back to what I was speaking about earlier, and I know I'm not asking you a question, I'm just voicing a concern about how LG&E is justifying the need for this extra generating power. And what evidence do they have to support? Are we having brownouts? Are we not being able to supply new apartment complexes or subdivisions? Is the energy not there? What is the net need for it? I know they're thinking about future expansion, but I don't think they have anything in hand saying that this company is going to buy this power from them yet. So I don't think you can anticipate spending $3-some-odd billion plus on something that's not even there. You don't have a contract in hand. You don't have a commitment. It's not even built yet. The zoning's not even there as far as I know. So my question is, how can LG&E justify and putting this on the back now? You guys are not on this yet, but that's upcoming. Putting that $3.8 billion on the ratepayers' back, when indeed they'll probably cut a deal with the data center if it comes to fruition. Hey, we'll give you your commercial power for half to get you to sign up. And I'm sure the economic development folks in the state of Kentucky, bless their hearts, they'll encourage this company to come and give them some incentives. But I work for a company that has a data center. We have one of 2 level 1 data centers in the country. It's a DOD certified data center. We have 3 points of power. We have LG&E, we have KU, and we have Salt River. So we have redundancy in power. We have 100 generators out back. And in case all 3 of those guys go down, we can run the data center. We have it's air conditioned inside. We don't use water. It's air conditioning inside. Of course, it pulls some power. So yes, it costs a lot of money to run that data center. Now we do kind of multiple things, and data centers do this. We have our own data files. We work for HSA, the Center for Medicaid Services. It's all of your health information. If you have Elevance Health or Anthem, it's all your health information. We store it there. We also sell space to other companies, Humana, to name a couple other companies that we store their data for them. That's how that revenue comes to us. So that keeps Humana, say, from having to build a data center, or another company from having to run their own. It's expensive to build one. But they don't have a whole, we have 5 people per shift, 3 shifts, that run that data center. That's all there is. So there is no real economic development from employment, taxes, and that they pay, and revenue to the local economy. There's not a lot there. But my biggest concern there with this is, how can LG&E, in good conscience, justify that they need these 2 600 and some odd kilowatt generating stations, plus the BESS plant, which is a risky investment in itself. If you've watched the news at all, 3 months ago there was a BESS plant in California that caught on fire. It burned for 2 weeks. They couldn't put it out until it burnt out. There was toxic fumes. They evacuated entire neighborhoods. This is right across the street from my house. My wife said she's terrified. She's terrified. I'm terrified. But I know that's not something that you guys are going to be looking at. But I think the risk versus the taxpayer or the ratepayers paying for all this, and the fact that I've seen no plans yet as far as how they're going to mitigate these fires, how they're going to warn the public, how they're going to evacuate the area. Are they going to have money to train a local fire department and buy the proper equipment that's needed to extinguish these fires? That should be a concern, at least from a ratepayer perspective, from a fence line community, and even all around. I mean, you're talking about this could affect a 5-mile radius around this plant where this BESS system will go. So please consider that in your deliberations, and I appreciate the opportunity to at least, put that comment in here. And I wouldn't want to be in your position. You feel like a fish in a barrel sometimes, I'm sure. But thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thanks.
Thank you. Looks like we have another coming up.
Thanks for allowing me to speak. My name is Dr. Lance Pearson. I'm from Oldham County. As I've witnessed the testimony that the public has had so far, a couple of observations that I've had is that there are no LG&E or KU representatives here. I know at the beginning you explained that they're not required to be here for any of this, nor are you. And so the message that I wanted to communicate is, as the PSC, I would hope that you would put together a list of recommendations to the state legislature on how they might improve the process going forward, as these hyperscale data centers and their requirements are not going away. Any place that has excess electrical capacity in existence already is fielding multiple proposals, and the electrical company is pursuing multiple avenues to bring in more data centers, because these are exceptionally profitable for these utility companies. So some recommendations that I think you should give as a report to the state legislature for possible revisions are a requirement that the utility companies have public comment from whenever they are attempting to significantly raise rates or expand capacity for energy production. I would actually also recommend that it's a requirement for you. I appreciate that you're coming, but in my understanding, that's totally optional for you. That should not be optional. I appreciate what you're doing. I would appreciate it more if that were state law and you were required to do it. Another proposal that I would love for you to include in a presentation to the state legislature is a best practices of new regulations of hyperscale data centers as they relate to utility requirements. I believe someone before mentioned some regulations that Ohio has passed. The PSC in Georgia has also this year proposed new regulations. I think they actually have adopted new regulations for large load energy users. And what generated that is Georgia is becoming a center for hyperscale data centers. They are projecting that they will have a demand for over 22 gigawatts of new electrical capacity in the next decade. I don't imagine that we'll have quite that much, but you can imagine that we will have significant demand if some of these data centers go in and our legislature continues with the incentives that they've already provided. My recommendation, which is, I believe, consistent with what Georgia has done, is establishing a separate rate structure for large energy use consumers. If they're coming into an area that's going to require the building of excess power plants or capacity, they should foot the bill for that entire new construction. I understand that when a new house or a new subdivision goes in, we don't believe that that new subdivision should bear the entire cost of building out a new electrical power plant for the small amount that they're going to use. But when we're talking about facilities that are using in excess of 100 megawatts for a single building, and some of these sites that have been proposed in Kentucky, 600 or 500 megawatts for that site, which themselves require a full expansion of those power plants, they should bear the entire cost for those expansions. I also don't believe that it's unreasonable that we have a separate rate structure, I believe I mentioned that, for large consumers of electricity. I would love for a scenario where not only are they paying for the upgrades to the infrastructure, they're also paying for so they're not only paying for the upgrades to the electrical grid, the other infrastructure that's required, perhaps water mains due to the enormous amount of water that is often required to cool for facilities, expansion of the electrical production. I would also suggest that for these large users that are increasing the amount of particulate pollution, that they have a tariff that is assessed to them for that excess pollution. That doesn't make sense perhaps on an individual house basis, but when we're talking about hundreds of megawatts of fossil fuel energy production, that's a substantial amount of pollution that's hurting the health benefits, that's hurting the health of the entire community, and they should be paying for those long-term medical costs that they are incurring. In short, they should pay for all of the negatives that they are bringing to the community. I understand that there are some positives for these facilities, and it's quite possible that if properly regulated, some of these facilities would make sense in certain areas of the state. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to be fair, there are people from LG&E here tonight.
Okay. I would.
They are here.
Okay. Yeah. I would love for them to be here and actually take questions. But thank you. Thank you.
If you do have questions after, they'll be here.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Gentry from 40213 Audubon Park. I was just looking at, so for The increase in demand for these data centers over the past few years, a great deal of this is due to the expansion of AI technology. We have to acknowledge that this technology is only 2.5 years old. Its current rate of power consumption is not going to probably continue in that way. And in fact, earlier this year, DeepSeek, a Chinese-based company, released a model that only consumes half the power that current AI models use. And if AI models are driving at least half of the increase in demand for data centers, then that actually significantly increases the probability that we, the ratepayers, will be on the hook for this increased generation. And, I echo all of the environmental concerns as well. But some of the financial modeling just looks dubious at best and needs to better incorporate just what we acknowledge will be improvements in technology over time. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anyone else coming forward. It's been 2 hours and 40 minutes without a bathroom break or dinner break, and we certainly appreciate the public's interest in coming out and listening to one another and the courtesy everyone has shown tonight to one another. And if no one else is interested in commenting at this time, we're about to adjourn, but I would remind everyone that you may still submit written comments to the commission by either mailing them or emailing them to us at psc.comment@ky.gov. Be sure when you correspond with us that you always reference the case number so that it gets filed in the appropriate case, and that is 2025-00045. And especially you, sir, who had some more comments, please sign up to give online comment or do it again on the day of the actual hearing in person if you'd like in Frankfurt. And so with that, thanks everyone for coming, and we're adjourned.